Let's talk Ricky Pearsall. I think it's pretty clear that the Niners are not messing around with Brandon Aiyuk. Instead of making him happy, like, look, there's two ways they could have went. Brandon, you're irreplaceable. We're going to give you a contract extension in May and have you there for minicamp. That's what a lot of teams did with their wide receivers. Brown said, Amon-Ra, you're irreplaceable to us. We got to have you. Niners didn't say that. They went the other route and said, we might replace you if you don't lower your demands. We're drafting a wide receiver in round 1. So the question is, can Ricky Pearsall really replace Brandon Aiyuk? Because that's what they drafted him to do. When they drafted him, people were saying, oh, he could be the next Debo. Hell no. No. Debo runs over people. Debo's a yak monster. Weighs like 220 pounds. Pearsall weighs like 180 something. He is a route technician. He's a finesse wide receiver like Aiyuk. Except Aiyuk is like 205 pounds. He's also really strong. So that's the position that Pearsall could play. Can he replace Aiyuk? Well, I've watched him. I watched Aiyuk's rookie year in practice. I've seen Pearsall's rookie year in practice. Both good. Aiyuk, clearly better. Just as good of a route runner. Bigger, faster, stronger, better. So if it's a 1-for-1 replacement, no. Absolutely not. But it's not that simple. Pearsall isn't replacing rookie Aiyuk on a cheap, reasonable deal. He'd be potentially replacing veteran Aiyuk, who would be getting paid quarterback money. And that's a discussion. Would you rather pay Brandon Aiyuk $30 million a year or Ricky Pearsall like $5 million a year to play the same position? Well, I might go with the second one. I wasn't a big fan of the Ricky Pearsall pick, and I didn't think he was worth the first-round pick, but I'm definitely not a fan of spending that much money on pretty much any wide receiver. I mean, okay, Justin Jefferson gets $35 million a year, and he's quote-unquote worth it. Does anyone think the Vikings are going anywhere? Ever. I don't. How do you make that work? You have to have a quarterback on a rookie deal, and with him on the team, you'll be too good to get a really good quarterback. Like, they couldn't get a top 1, 2, 3 pick because they had Justin Jefferson on the team. So they had to reach for J.J. McCarthy with the 10th pick. And then they're not even starting. They have Sam Darnold. I just don't think it's a conducive to winning a Super Bowl, which is all we're talking about with the Niners, right? Not like paying players what's fair or being a family or being player friendly. It's just winning a Super Bowl. And is making Brandon Aiyuk the second highest paid player in the team the way to do it? I don't think so. So I think it would make much more sense to go with the rookie at that position. And from what I've seen with Ricky Pearsall, he's good enough. He looks solid. He looks like a good route runner. He looks shifty. He looks not scared to go over the middle. He doesn't look like Brandon Aiyuk, but he looks good enough. So if the Niners get a good deal for Brandon Aiyuk, you gotta trade him, man. You can't give him $30 million a year just because he wants it. You can't force him to play out the 5th-year option and be a malcontent in the locker room because it's not going to help you win the Super Bowl. It's not. You're better off trading him and having one team. It's hard to have one team that's not fractured. Teams that lose Super Bowls often fracture. Happened to the Eagles last year. Happened to the Niners 4 years ago. They often fall apart. Holding Brandon Aiyuk here against his will without an extension is asking for something to fall apart on this team. Asking. So the time to extend him was before minicamp. They don't want to do it. They brought in Ricky Pearsall. They've made it clear how they feel about paying Aiyuk what he wants. All right. You've seen Ricky Pearsall. He looks pretty good. Let's go. Trade Aiyuk. What are you waiting for? The Niners are going to mess around and mess this up because you could argue that extending Aiyuk could work out. Trading Aiyuk could work out. But what they're going to do is option 3. They always do option 3. Try to trade Aiyuk, ask for too much, keep him here against his will, try to force it, and then when it blows up in their faces, be like, wow, I'm so surprised. Thought we understood human dynamics. Why? How did this not work? Right? This is what happened with Jimmy. They decided we don't want Jimmy anymore. Jimmy's not part of our future. He's replaceable. You brought in his replacement, and then you held on to Jimmy for years because teams weren't willing to give you what you wanted for him, and eventually you got nothing for him, and it did fracture the locker room. People were not in Trey Lance's corner. You had the Trey Lance faction and the Jimmy Garoppolo faction. It was obvious. And of course, Brock Purdy saved everyone. The 49ers messiah, really. But that's what Kyle Shanahan created by deeming a player replaceable, bringing in his replacement, not getting rid of the expendable player because he's worth so much to you. How is Aiyuk worth so much to you when you won't pay him what he wants and you just drafted his replacement? Just trade him. And if you lose the deal, that's life. That's life. Iggy, we aren't winning a Super Bowl this year without BA. Hey, I got to tell you something, Brother Bob. You know what I'm going to say, too. Niners aren't winning the Super Bowl this year with them either. You know why? Kyle Levy. Average student says potential topics. Interested to know more about the athlete-journalist dynamics plus how we evaluate the person versus the athlete plus fan base ranking. The athlete-journalist dynamics. It's interesting. It's like when they're playing, it's hard to get an interview. You go to their agent, maybe they'll get back to you. You go up to them in the locker room, maybe later this week. It's kind of tough. I got stuff to do. But when they retire, all of a sudden they got publicists and people being like, hey, so-and-so would like to talk. Hey, so-and-so's available. It's like, oh, okay. All right. Interesting. So that kind of changes when the athlete retires. How you evaluate the person versus the athlete, I really couldn't tell you that. I'm not a scout on that team. Fan base ranking? I mean, the Niners fan base is very large and passionate. And knowledgeable considering you guys watch me and David, who's just such a great teacher.